Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are at Shirat Hayam. We are at the part where the Israelites leave Egypt and cross the Sea of Reeds, Yam Suf, and they respond to their own deliverance from Pharaoh and his army with song. So remember, shir in Hebrew is both poem and song. There's not a difference in Hebrew. So if you want to call this the poem at the sea, that works. The song at the sea, that works. We're not sure if this is something that was sung, but we know it's one of the older pieces of text that we have. It's one of the oldest pieces of text that we have. So this is a very, very, very old tradition, this song, meaning it even predates the narrative around it. It's very old Hebrew, which makes it not the easiest thing in the universe to translate. And it is, like most biblical poetry, often in pairs, the same action given two different words. So that helps us often translate stuff where we don't have those words anywhere else. And so I also want to look a little bit at Leon Cass, who we've been reading through Genesis and now in Exodus. If you'll recall, in Genesis, he's talking about the covenant passing through each generation. And now in Exodus, his book on Exodus is called Founding God's Nation. So he's talking about how the narrative unfolds of the founding of the people Israel, from being a family to being a nation, to being an to being a people. So that's his understanding of Exodus. That's pretty much everybody's understanding of Exodus. We have in Genesis the family story. That's the origins of humanity, the origins of why things are the way they are, as well as the emergence of this covenantal relationship with one family, the family of Abraham and Sarah. And then now, 400 years later, Pharaoh calls the Israelites a nation, a people. So we are now in the foundational story narratives about this Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, moving from being really Bnei Yisrael, the descendants of Yisrael, the 12, sons and Dinah of Yisrael, of Israel, of Yaakov, to becoming Bnei Yisrael, the people, the children of Israel, the people. And so this is the foundational moment for that, of course, the redemption from slavery. We're called an while we're still in Egypt by Paro. So Paro identifies the Hebrews as a people, but really the people don't understand necessarily themselves as a people until we get these narratives about the redemption from Egypt. And then, of course, next week, the standing at Sinai. You cannot separate, in our tradition, redemption from revelation. The purpose of redemption is revelation. The purpose of redemption is not freedom. Remember, Cass talked about this? Freedom is not mentioned anywhere in any of these texts about the Exodus. Nowhere. It is called redemption and deliverance. So the focus is not on our freedom from, it's a focus on freedom for. If you're not free, you can't choose to keep the commandments. So we are redeemed from slavery in order to live into a different way from Egypt. That way will be the way of Sinai. What Cass calls a lot of times the way of the Lord. Okay? The way of Adonai. So one thing I want to point out is as we start this whole narrative of I'm not going to go all the way to the back, the very beginning of this scene or story. It's too long for us to get through any kind of commentary. But it's important to note that God does not lead them the short way, the most direct way, because they would come into contact with the Plishtim, with the Philistines. And God knows that they would freak out if they had to go and confront a military nation, a militarized nation like the Philistines. So God takes them a longer way by way of the Midbar, the Sea of, at the Yam Suf, at the Sea of Reeds. What's important for Cass, one of the things that's really important for him and many scholars is, and we spent a whole year on this, and because Bert is so good at choosing titles for these shiurim, these lessons, you can look back through the library of the podcast and find the year that we talked all about Yosef and Yosef's bones. We did a whole shiur on the meaning of taking up Joseph's bones from Egypt. But one thing Cass points out is with this, that Moshe took with him the bones of Yosef, who had exacted an oath from the people Israel, saying, God will be sure to take notice of you, then you shall carry up my bones from here with you. Cass says, this is the beginning of the undoing of Egypt for the Israelites. Taking the bones of Yosef out of Egypt ends the story of the people Israel in Egypt. It begins with Joseph being sold into slavery into Egypt, and he points out that it ends with Moshe taking Yosef's bones out of Egypt. And that doing this reminds the people that Yosef chose Israel over Egypt. Even though he was the powerful second in command of Egypt, even though what he did eventually led to slavery, the way he, changed the economic system and the ownership of land, even though he is in one way responsible for what happened to them, he chose Israel. He didn't want to stay in Egypt. Cass thinks that's important at this moment, that this symbolic act of Moshe reminds the people of their connection to their ancestors, to Joseph's family, as well as reminding them of a time before they were enslaved when Joseph was a big shot. One of them was a big shot in Egypt, and reminds them that that big shot chose not to be buried in Egypt, awaiting reanimation from mummification. Okay? I hadn't really ever thought about it like that before. That this shows the people, even Yosef, did not choose to stay in Egypt, but wanted to go out and go to the land of Israel. So they set out, and God goes before them in a pillar of cloud by day to guide them along the way, and a pillar of fire by night to give them light, that they might travel day and night. And it did not depart from before the people, neither one of those things. God says to Moshe, tell them to turn around and camp before Pi Hachirot, between Migdol and the sea, before Baal Tzifon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. This is a plan by Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, so that Pharaoh will hear that they're camping there and will say they've gotten lost. And essentially the Midbar is closing in on them. They don't know where to go. They don't have anywhere to go. They're trapped. And I will strengthen Pharaoh's heart, that he will pursue them. And again, we talked a little bit about this last week, that I might be made that I might be glorified by Paro and all of his soldiers. V'yadu Mitzrayim, and Egypt shall know, ki ani Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, that I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, that I am God. So we talked a bit about this, that this is for the Egyptians. There may be a relation between the Egyptians getting this and what it means for the Israelites to see the Egyptians get this and serve as witness to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh being God. This is about the Egyptians understanding that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is the power that has made all of this happen. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his courtiers had a change of heart and said, remember, because Pharaoh threw them out, what is this we've done, releasing Israel from our service? He ordered his chariot and took his force with him He took 600 chariots and the rest of the chariots of Egypt with officers in all of them, right? This is the most terrifying thing you could imagine in the ancient world. Chariots and specialized drivers who are armed. They go very fast and they can run over people, right? This is the tank of the ancient world. So God strengthens Pharaoh's heart, and Pharaoh gives chase to the Israelites, and they leave biyad ramah, with a raised hand. So it's a euphemism, an idiomatic expression for defiantly. The Egyptians gave chase, and all the chariot horses of Pharaoh, his riders, and his warriors overtook them and camped by the sea before Baal-Zephon. As Pharaoh draws near, the Israelites catch sight of the Egyptians, right? And they are, of course, terrified. And they cry out, El Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, to God. And they said to Moshe, here's one of our famous lines, was it for want of graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness? What have you done, taking us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt, saying, let us be, and we will serve the Egyptians, for it is better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. So they are flipped out. Whenever a people is oppressed and flipped out, they turn on their leaders. We see this over and over again in history, and we see it over and over again in our story. This sarcasm, right, the kind of last tool of, right, a frustrated people is sarcasm. And we don't know this scene they're talking about. We told you, let us be, and we'll serve the Egyptians. We don't have this scene. Either it's lost to us or they're making it up. They never said that. We don't know. Doesn't matter. Moshe says to the people, do not fear, stand by and witness the deliverance that God will work for you. For the Egyptians you see today, you will not see again. God will battle for you. You hold your peace. Then God says to Moshe, why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward. So you all know this is one of my favorite parts of Torah, that the people are yelling and screaming and crying out to God, but God turns to Moses and says, what is this that you're crying out to me? We don't hear that Moshe is crying out to God. So we've done stuff on that before as well. But what's important here for our purposes is that God says, Vayisa'u, tell them Yisa'u, to go forward. And you lift up your rod and hold out your arm over the sea and split it so that the Israelites may march into the sea on dry ground. And I will strengthen the hearts of the Egyptians so that they go in after them. And I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his warriors, his chariots and his riders. Vayedu Mitzrayim, and Egypt will know that I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. I will gain glory through Pharaoh and his chariots and riders. The angel of God that had been in front of them now goes behind them to come between the army of the Egyptians and the army of Israel. And Moshe holds his arm out over the sea. God drives back the sea with a strong east wind all that night and turned the sea into dry ground. The waters were split, and the Israelites went into the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. Then here come the Egyptians with their chariots into that same place. And at the time of the morning watch, that's a military time, God looked down upon the Egyptian army from a pillar of fire and cloud and threw the Egyptian army into panic. God locked the wheels of their chariot so that they moved forward with difficulty. And the Egyptians said, let us flee from the Israelites, for God is fighting for them against Egypt. This is the moment that God has been setting up. That Egypt finally acknowledges that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is the one fighting for the people Israel. And of course, part of that is for the people of Israel to understand that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is fighting for them. Because until now, all they've seen is Moshe be the one who announces plagues. They haven't seen the full force. They haven't seen Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh fighting for them until now. So it is both for the Egyptians and for the Israelites. And God says to Moshe, hold your arm over the sea, that the waters may come back on the Egyptians and upon their chariots and upon their riders. Moshe does so, and at daybreak the sea returned to its normal state, and the Egyptians fled at its approach, but God hurled the Egyptians into the sea. The waters turned back and covered the chariots and the riders. Pharaoh's entire army that followed them into the sea, not one of them remained. But the Israelites marched through the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right, on their left, and on their left. Thus God delivered Israel that day from the Egyptians. Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the shore of the sea. And when Israel saw the wondrous power that God had wielded against the Egyptians, the people feared God. They had faith in God and in Moshe, God's servant. So this is the moment Israel is converted. Whatever had gone on for them before, they now have a conversion experience, understanding, and coming to a place of yirah, of awe and fear and wonder, all of that, all at the same time in this Hebrew word yirah. And in that yirah, they understood that Yud He Vav He was the one working all of this for them. And they trusted in Yud He Vav He and in Moshe, God's servant. That is the point of a lot of this, was to have the Egyptians admit Yud He Vav He is the power behind all of this, and for the Israelites to reach a place of yirah and emunah, awe and faith, trust. Okay, but this is not a blind faith, which is different from how we sometimes use the word faith in English. Faith means I trust it even though the facts may point to something else. That's not what emunah is. Emunah is an affirmation, right, of trusting in a way because of what one experiences, that this is Yud He Vav He at work. All right. The response to this is the Song of the Sea. That is something we understand and take for granted as a literary tradition. But if you think about it, really? Their response is poetry? Really? Like, we're so used to it, we don't really think about it. But this is the response to what has just happened. This is our people's understanding of the response. It is a poem. It is a scribal tradition that is preserved from very early times, that it is written, this is how it is written in the Torah. In every Sefer Torah, this is how the song appears. The scribal tradition is maintained in every Torah scroll. And as you can see, it is got rectangular blocks of white parchment. Yes, the text is arranged so that you have rectangular blocks of white space. So this is, from the interpretations we are handed down through the generations, is supposed to be bricks. They used bricks to torture the Israelites and keep them oppressed. So their victory song is written in the shape of interlocking bricks to say, our slavery was related to this, now so is our redemption, right? We're going to arrange our song of victory and deliverance and redemption by God. We're going to arrange it with the same tools that were used to oppress us. Okay, beautiful. Like reconstructing bricks, literally and metaphorically, right? Reconstructing. Okay, so this is how it's written in Torah. This piece of literature is sung every morning as part of the morning davening, as part of the morning prayers. So many of you know, because you've been learning with me for a long time, that I sang this every morning at the Hebrew Academy. So when we went to school, this is one of the first things we did in the morning was we daven Shachrit. We did the morning service, including this song at the sea. Most of us who did that know it by heart because we sang it every morning. So here it is. Here's the song at the sea. Y'all can see the English, yes? All right, here we go. Az yashir Moshe uvnei Yisrael et hashira zot ladonai vayomru lemor ashira ladonai ki ga'o ga'a sus v'rechavo rama vayam haziv zimrat ya Vayihi li lishua ze livian veu Elohei avira romemenhu Adonai ish milchama Adonai shemo markevot para b'chelo Yara vayam umivchar shalishav Tum yam suv tomot yichasimu Yardu v'mimslo kmo aven Yamincha Adonai Nedari bakoach Yamincha Adonai Tir'at soyev uverov geoncha, taros kamecha tishalach paroncha, yochlemo kakash uveruach apecha, nermu mayim nitzvu kmonen ozlim, kafutem uplev yam, amar oyev, erdofasi gachalek shalal, timla emo nafshi harbi, tori shemo yadi nashav tabruchacha, Kisamoyam salilu kalferet b'mayim adirim mikamocha ba'elim Adonai mikamocha nedar b'kodesh nora tehilot osef ele natita yamincha tivla'e moraretz nachita b'chastecha amzu ga'alta nehalta be'oscha El neve kodshech shamu amay mirgzun chilachaz yoshvei plashet azni falu el fedom ele moav yochozim orad namogu kol yoshvei kenaan tipol alehem emata v'fachad bigdol zroacha yidmu ka'aven adia avor amcha Adonai adia avor amzukanita tiva emo v'tita emo bahar nachalatcha machon l'shivtecha pa'alta Adonai mikdash Adonai konenu yadecha Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. It is written in a Hebrew that is very easy to memorize. So this is not lost on Cass, who says this was written to be recited, right? This was written to be recited as a liturgical retelling of the Exodus and the moment of deliverance from Egypt. This is both the people's response to that set of events and that miracle and all of that, as well as something that defines it for them. It describes what happened, but also describes the meaning of what happened to make them a people. So this is a reflection on those events, but it is also a shaping of what those events mean to this people, and is to be recited over and over and over and over again as our foundational moments and experiences as a people. Okay, Betsy?
This whole scene and this whole story raises so many questions for me. And one of them is in reciting the song of the sea. I mean, there seems to be lacking any sort of mercy or compassion for the entire destruction of the Egyptian people. Like, where I know during the Seder we take out bits of the wine, because that's supposed to recall like the destruction of this people and our somewhat sorrow over what happened, I guess. But I mean, with this, you're saying you had to recite this every day, and I'm just wondering, like, where is the understanding or mercy or any sort of hint of compassion in this?
So it's a good question. So first of all, it's not the entire Egyptian people. It is Pharaoh's army. Yeah. This is a military victory paean that is celebrating the moment of military victory by God over the army coming to murder us. There's no apology given for the fact that they were coming to kill us. We won. Let's eat. So that's one thing. This is a genre of literature. They're very common in the ancient world. These military victory poems. It's very common. So this is ours. But notice, it's not about us winning the battle. And usually these poems are written in the ancient world about whom? Who's the star of the show, generally?
The king.
The king. Exactly. The king. What's in ours? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, norata hilot osefele. Who is the hero here?
God.
Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh.
Yeah.
Among all the gods. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai. So that's important, that this is a reconstruction of that very old, very common, very popular tradition. If you are going to commemorate a battle, you have to have the commemorative poem, the victory poem. This is ours. The difference is, for Israel, it does not glorify the king. Whom else does it not glorify?
Moses.
And Aaron. Very important. They are not mentioned in this poem. That is very important. So it's less important what isn't here in terms of what we want to see. What's more important to understand it in context, I think, is what's not here that was in every other victory poem in the region.
And Nahshon isn't here even. He's like my primary memory of all this.
Nahshon,
the guy that said, I'll go first.
Okay, so Nahshon is not in Torah.
Right.
Nahshon is a midrash, but everyone thinks it's in Torah because everyone knows that midrash. And Betsy, to your point,
everyone except Bert.
I know the midrash.
So we were taught that the angels are rejoicing when this happens, and God comes down on them really hard and says, "How dare you celebrate while my children are drowning in the sea?" Meaning the Egyptian army.
Is that a midrash?
Yes. So we were taught that midrash right alongside Nahshon and right alongside this. So even though we sang this song, we were also taught that God comes down hard on the angels, saying, "How dare you celebrate when my children are drowning?" So,
and God would say, "My children." He would call the Egyptians "my children."
Yes. All right, Bert.
Kind of as a flip side of what Betsy said, there are three lines in this that always pop out to me. One, of course, is the Mi Chamocha, which is a sense of the awe of the unknown and known powers of God. We see some things like they saw the sea parting, and then there are other things that we don't see. But at the beginning there's a couple of things. At the beginning of the song, it says, Aziv Zimrat Yahvehi Yeshua, which in many synagogues is sung as well, and Mi Chamocha is not, which basically says God is my song. So the question for me is always...
Wait. Say it again.
God is my power and my song is one of the... That's a Jonathan Sachs translation.
Sort of, not really. Ozi v'zimrat yah vayihili lishua. Ozi, my strength, v'zimrat yah, and the song of God, vayihili lishua, will be for me salvation.
Okay, the song of God. So to me, the question becomes, what song do I sing? What song does my life sing? And does my life sing a song of God? So that's one dimension of it. Another dimension is at the end, Adonai Yimlach Le'olam Va'ed, which is a statement that God preceded us and will come after us, and that there is something that will be forever that is not us. So these lines maybe I'm translating them wrong, but has always stuck out to me more as proclamations of faith. I mean, even the line, there's a line in there that right after Aziv Zimrat Yah, which you could probably translate better than me. I know that Rashi considers to say, I will build a house in myself for God, that I will become a temple for God myself.
Okay,
in terms of what I do and how I act.
Beautiful. All right, so you can see how people like Bert, who daven every day, take this and metaphorically can enter these these images and these mythic moments to point towards, right, the spiritual life. That's what people have done for centuries, right, who don't want to read this literally, right? They read this metaphorically. We, at the women's retreat, chant Oziv Zimrat Yah. We chant that line all the time at the women's retreat. My strength and the song of God will be salvific. That's what will save us all, is our strength and the song of the universe together, and balancing those. What am I expected to do? How do I need to step forward? Right? God says, tell them to move forward, to quit crying to me, move. So what do I have to do? And when do I need to rely on Zimrat Yah, the song of the universe, right? And it's about a harmony and a balance between those things always. If we want to reach salvation, salvation for us, remember, is not from sin. Has nothing to do with sin. Mordechai Kaplan defines salvation as every human being being able to reach their full potential. What if we could have salvation for everybody, which means everybody would be given everything they need to fulfill their unique potential? Sign me up for salvation if that's what it means. But that is our word, and it is an old Hebrew word, and is, again, not related in any way to the concept of sin. Betsy?
I know I've heard various explanations for this in the past, but how did historians explain this whole situation, this whole scene? I mean, of the parting of the Sea of Reeds. I mean, was it an earthquake or something that occurred historically at that time?
So we have lots of ways of understanding possibly what happened physically. It is, first of all, it is a yam. It is a sea. It is not an ocean, right? So it is an inland sea, a small body of water. And it is possible that there was either some kind of wind event, right, that causes water to be shallow enough to walk on, or to walk through, to be able to cross that body of water. We're not sure. We have a vague reference to a battle that the Pharaoh had against a Semitic group. But really we have zero evidence. As you know, I've taught this a lot. We have zero evidence of an exodus from Egypt. Zero. Nothing. Bubkis. So there's no archaeological record. This is our sacred mythology. So whatever the event was, whatever the skirmish was that the Semites won, right? Whatever this going out of a group of them was, and escaping oppression in Egypt, whatever that was, it becomes a story of Yud He Vav He redeeming us from slavery in order to serve God at God's mountain, to take on the commitments of building a society based in Jewish values, if you want to use that word. That's anachronism, but Israelite values, what they're going to learn at Sinai. That's why they are redeemed. Okay. And remember, redemption means becoming what you were always supposed to be all along. Do you remember this? When you redeem a coupon, you're taking a piece of paper and you're redeeming it. When I redeem the coupon, what happens? This is worthless until it's redeemed. When I redeem it, I turn it into the cashier, and the cashier gives me back 25 cents. The quarter, the 25 cents, is what this is always supposed to be. It's never supposed to be paper. It stands in for the quarter. Does that make sense? The quarter is the point. That's what it's always been. This has always been about a quarter. So redemption is what we were always supposed to be, is free people. Nobody's supposed to be enslaved. Nobody. So we were supposed to be free. So we're redeemed back to the condition we were supposed to be in. Okay. So yes, the Book of Green Stamps. Kushner, no, is it Kushner? has a beautiful piece on this about saving stamps, green stamps, when he was little, and collecting the books of green stamps and then turning it in for a toaster or a blender or whatever the heck it was, with his mom, and how exciting it was when they could redeem the books of stamps. And he talks about it in this moment, about the redemption from slavery in Egypt. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Remind me, I'll do it for you maybe next year. And the smell of the adhesive. There you go. Okay. Yep. She got her first backpack with green stamps. See, here it comes. So this is redemption. All right. Let's look at Cass. This I never put together till he says this. I think this is fascinating. The splitting of the Sea of Reeds is described in language and imagery that recalled the creation story of Genesis 1. There, starting in darkness with a watery chaos, tohu vavohu, the ruach, the breath or spirit of God, hovers over the face of the waters. Light was created, and day was separated from night, and the waters were divided above from below to open a space for dry land to appear. The original coming into being of the world through acts of separation is re-evoked in this symbolic rebirth of the nation of Israel, passing through the waters from slavery under Pharaoh to freedom in relation to God. What? Okay, how did I never know about that? Yes, we've talked, Pam, about the Sea of Reeds coming through the birth canal, 100%. Coming out of the bloody portal, the night of watching, you come through the bloody portal, right? Because they put blood on the doorpost. You're coming through the bloody vagina, right? And here you're coming through the birthing waters, right? Your water breaks and you come through into rebirth. 100% all of that's there. I never before put the creation story on this before. That it's the same stuff that happens, right? The waters are divided so that there's yabasha, there's dry land. In this creation story, the waters from on top and the waters from below are separated so that there's a place for land, for earth to exist. Well, I never thought about that. That now the waters part, and once again we have creation. What do we have creation of? We have creation of a people. So this is a second creation. Why is it called the Red Sea? I don't know. It's a mistranslation. It's Yam Suf. Suf are the reeds, the marshlands. What Moshe's basket is put in, that's an Egyptian loanword into Hebrew. It's Suf, reeds. Of course it has to do with blood in the birth canal. Of course. All of these images of birth. Of course. Yes. 100%. So all of this birthing that we've talked about. And I've always loved that this is kind of this imagery of birth and of the feminine and the midwifing of God as midwife, like all that stuff. God either as a woman in travail or God as midwife. I love it all. I never understood it as creation. So this separating of the waters so that there's a place for land to exist, and what comes into being is a people. So all of those images are there, 100%. Okay. So let's go back to Cass. So right here, here's birth, right? This is what he talks about as well. And as daylight returns, the Egyptians find themselves in the midst of the seafloor, right? So we get daylight, we get just like in the creation narrative, we get light and the first day. Okay. So, but we're going to go on. That Egypt comes to a chaotic and watery end is fitting in a still deeper way. The Egyptians deserve to meet their end in the water, not only because they drowned the babies, but also for their technocratic and political practices. As we noted in the discussion of the plagues, what looks in Egypt like technical mastery over nature turns out to be a forerunner of chaos. Here, the crocodile tries to conquer the sea on wheels and gains his watery end. To rule by might and not by right is to be the author of a mayhem that is finally self-engulfing. Egypt is finished off in the formless chaos that is the true meaning of who she was. The saga of Israel in Egypt is finally over. The Egyptians know Yud-He Vav-He. The so-called gods of the Egyptians, including Pharaoh, are smashed. So this idea that tohu vavohu, the waters come back on each other and create chaos. Where do we have that happening in our narrative? Where does that happen?
Sidur.
Where does that happen?
Yeah, well, the water comes over the Egyptians.
Before that.
Genesis.
Noah's
Great
story.
sheet.
Yes, Genesis. Noah. The waters from on top and the waters from below come together and destroy everything. That is this moment mapped onto Genesis, or Genesis mapped onto this, like, right? That the Egyptians meet their end in the watery chaos of the waters coming back together and closing and, right, dissolving everything. Beautiful. Judith?
Two things. One, as you look in anthropological sources, you find these stories very similar in many other cultures. That doesn't mean ours is lesser. As a matter of fact, it may be one of the few that has withheld the time problem and is still very much alive and offered a way of life for people who cling to it. The second thing is back to the green stamps. In Texas, where I grew up, there was a big sign, as there were all over Texas, Jesus saves, and someone attached underneath it green stamps. So,
Okay, there you go.
Green stamps were a big deal.
Okay. Alex?
I have a few questions. The first, going back to, is this suggesting that redemption and creation are synonymous? Then what is it suggesting about Egypt? And then I noticed in the ballad that you sang, there was something about Philistine or the Philista, sorry if that, but what is it suggesting about people other than Jews?
Okay. It is, okay, let me take the first one first. So creation, we're going to map that onto this story. The point of creation for us is this moment for us of becoming a people to take on the way of holiness and righteousness, right? Sinai, to agree to build a society that is the opposite of Egypt. So what Egypt means in this story is the place that worships death, the place that wants control over death and eternal life, meaning like, mummification, everything is for the afterlife. You're going to have this great life in the afterlife. Israelite religion comes to refute that. And Egypt's focus on the material, on gold and jewels and like all of the material wealth that Egypt stood for, because in our experience of Egypt, it was an inequity that left people devastated. There's nothing wrong with buildings made of gold. What's wrong is the inequity that someone like Pharaoh and his courtiers have all of the power, and the lives of other people are only to serve them maintaining that level of comfort and luxury and fill in the blank. Israel is going to be told, you don't get to do that. Nope. You have to love the stranger. You have to welcome the stranger into your land, and they get to rest on Shabbos also. And you have to take care of the widow and the orphan. You may not exploit them. So Egypt, sorry, people, I don't know what's happening. Egypt represents all of the things that are the antithesis of what Israelite religion and society, there was no separation between religion and society in ancient Israel or in the ancient world, just a theocracy. Ancient Israelite politics and religion, which are hand in hand, God as king, is the antithesis of everything Egypt stands for. The people quoted in the song, the Philistines, the Canaanites, in the song, it says they are terrified and in shock and awe of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh's deliverance of the Israelites. Right? Like everybody found out, everybody heard what happened with Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and the Israelites, and they are fittingly awed.
But what might that suggest then about non-Israelites or the other people than Israeli, or is that just pushing things forward and completely irrelevant?
What are you? So tell me what you're wondering about. What that mean? What do you mean? What does it mean about other peoples?
Well, so firstly, just go back from what you were discussing earlier, and people had raised this issue of creation and redemption. I guess really redemption is a form of creation, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then going back to that ballad and what you were just talking about, fast forward to today, is that still technically applicable? And the irony of us as, when the oppressed then take on the role of the oppressor. I'm not suggesting anything about Israel as a state right now. I'm just talking about in general and what you're saying about taking on or about the inequity, right? And what does that mean for today, I guess, all of those things.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a lot. And you don't
okay.
have to touch on it now, but
no, it's okay. It's okay. What it means is we are a people who understands our formation to be in order to build a society reflective of justice and holiness and goodness. That's our purpose. It is written, these texts are written by a people who are settled in the land of Israel and are successful. They write these stories about their formation having been as an oppressed people. Now, I'm not suggesting that's not true, that we didn't have some origin, somewhere, something, whatever. But what's important to know is that these texts are written and taught and celebrated by a people that was successful. Because the danger isn't when you're oppressed. The danger is exactly what you said. The danger is I'm on third and think it's because I hit a triple. The danger that Torah is always talking about is the Israelites being comfortable and forgetting to share from their wealth with other people in their community because they never did. Let's be clear.
So the continuing push and pull of power and materialism.
Yes. Okay. They never took care of the widow and the orphan. They were taken advantage of. Or you don't need to write it down. Right? So it's always the temptation to exploit those, right, who don't have, and to take more if you can, and let other people be homeless. Torah's always warning about when you get to the land, don't think it's because you earned it. It's because I took you out. I delivered you. I brought you there. I gave you this. And the only way you get to keep it is if you share it equally. Or at least share it in a way that there's a threshold below which nobody falls. Torah recognizes that there are poor people, that there's indentured servitude. Torah recognizes that, but says there's a threshold below which no one can fall. And if you all don't make that the rule of your society, I will take it all back. I will kick you out and it all goes away. And of course, those texts are written by whom? People who were exiled. People who have to explain how they lost it all. This is what I talked about at the High Holidays, right? Deuteronomy is written by a people who were conquered, and they have to explain it. And the way they explain it to themselves is, we did not do it right until it was taken away. Okay. What does that say to us today? Well, for me, we still don't get it. We think we're so advanced. We think we're such hot stuff because we have electricity and we have Waymo, self-driving cars, and we have drugs that can conquer diseases. Okay, yeah. And take a drive down, right, Santa Monica, where I'm living these days, and we have people living on the street. So we still don't get it. We still haven't figured it out. We still don't want to share with the immigrants, the stranger. We still don't want to give part of our wealth to the stranger. Kick them out. They're 5 years old and you take their parents? Oh, well, they shouldn't have come here, right? So, I mean, it's 100% the reason these texts do not get old, because we still don't get it. I believe the power that makes for salvation and transformation and all of those things would love for us not to need to read these anymore. Unfortunately, they are as relevant now as they always have been. Susan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, it's just that back during the reign of one of the pharaohs, that there's a stela that talks about wiping out Israel. They shall be no more. Nobody remembers the pharaoh. We're still here, but I've always found that to be more historical evidence than some people.
Mm-hmm.
And
so part of it is, what is our attachment to there being an actual
an actual Red Sea and
right? Like
yeah.
For me, it stopped mattering.
Yeah.
Like I don't really care. But
since I'm a great fan of Babylon 5 and Jews in Space, I just love the thought that this guy nobody remembers stated that Israel is laid waste at sea.
So, and if you'll recall, one year I mentioned that the crazy part of me loves the idea that this story is actually the departure from Africa. This story is not about our people becoming a people. This is rooted in human memory of the exodus, not the exodus, but the leaving of Africa and the becoming of all peoples in the leaving of Africa, right? That we become different peoples only when we leave the savannah. And that is the moment of the birth of a certain kind of civilization. And that is an anthropological truth, that we all left Africa. And there are some who want to suggest this is that old a cellular memory.
It also goes with the Babel story.
Yes. The Babel story and this, right, are remembrances cell deep of human migration out of Africa and into lots of different kinds of cultures and civilization. So,
is there evidence so that humans began in that part of Africa though? Because I hadn't heard that Egypt, like that, the area that became Egypt.
No,
you're just saying the whole continent.
Yeah, I'm saying there are those who believe this is a very old memory, and it's older than the formation of the people Israel. Mm-hmm. It is the retelling, the reconstructing of the telling of the going out of humanity from Africa, mm-hmm. told in the language of Pharaonic Egypt and Semites, right? But that it's a much older memory that's being talked about here, mm-hmm. just talked about in the language of its time, which would have been Egypt, there being Semites and Philistines and Canaanites and all of that, right? That this is the language of the time as Semite. Oh boy.
I have just one thought at the very beginning when you were talking about they respond to Pharaoh's army with song, and it felt very current as to, every time there's conflict, there's song, and, whether it's Bob Dylan or now Bruce Springsteen, and that was just this ancient impulse that is still here.
Beautiful. And funny that So here's Cass talking about this song, this poetry is Moses' attempt to teach the people the meaning of the war and inspire them for the great tasks remaining before them, right? So that Moshe's helping them make sense out of what's happened. And that is what this poetry is. And song is a response to these incredibly big moments that we don't really know how to respond to otherwise. But, Laura, now to what Betsy was saying, Cass talks about that rather than just be ecstatic about what's happened, he's talking about there needing to be some other kind of understanding of what's happened to the Egyptians. And so he talks about Miriam leading. What does she lead? As we're told in the text, right? And Miriam took her timbrel out and all the women followed her. And so she leads them in micholot, dancing. So to your point, Laura, poetry is intellectual and reflective in Cass's estimation anyway. He's comparing that to dancing, even more than singing, is an ambiguous exuberance of soul. So he says song is important because everyone joins in and it makes everyone connected to something bigger than the individual. That's some of the power of song. But dancing, even more than singing, is an ambiguous exuberance of soul. Like joy, it is a great gift that elevates the spirit, but it is also dangerous to be released from one's right mind, to be outside of oneself, to merge with others in boundless energy. It may be that Miriam deliberately mobilized the wild spirit in order to give it direction. Later, Aaron with the golden calf tries the same thing. Perhaps this was a cunning move of leadership or a risky gamble. Not being a philosophical treatise, the text does not discuss the subject directly, but by leaving the situation unclear and its conclusion unknown, it invites us to think about the wilder Dionysiac passions in human life and the need to both give them expression and to hold them under rule, and the difficulty we all face in doing this successfully. An astute student of mine has suggested that the dancing of the women is meant to reassert the supremacy of the principle of life against the largely masculine, battle-glorying singing of the men. The men, fixated on the dead Egyptian host, celebrate the Lord as a god of war and of battles. The women, she suggests, may be celebrating the rebirth through the waters of the Israelite nation. Even if they are not doing it self-consciously, they are emblematic of that vital regenerative element lost from view in the male version of the event that both sexes have just witnessed. The distinctive activity of the women, who throughout the story of Egypt are the patrons and defenders of life, suggests that the song of the sea, glorious though it is, left out something vitally important. To the song of death-dealing victory in war must be added the dance of life and love in peace.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.